Good morning, everyone. Just going to wait for a few more people to arrive. Welcome to another spring showcase. Today, we're going to be learning more about how SES Water designed a universal access point for water as part of Ofwat's Water Breakthrough Challenge. My name is Ellis Collins. I'm Marketing and Communications Executive here at Spring Innovation. For those of you who might not already know, we are the Innovation Centre of Excellence for the water sector, supported by all water companies across the UK and Ireland, as well as the supply chain and academia. Our goal is to enable collaboration, remove duplication, and accelerate innovation within the water sector. Spring are the custodians of the Water Innovation Strategy 2050. For anyone who hasn't seen that document, we will share a link in the chat. It lives on our website and outlines 7 main themes with challenges sitting under the themes that we are currently trying to tackle in the sector. Spring also puts out calls for innovation against those themes through our accelerator service. You can find out more about the current accelerator programs on our website. But today's service offering is all about the knowledge sharing part of our business. We have 2 aspects to that. The first being the knowledge library on our Spring platform, where there's a bank of over 60 case studies of innovation projects from across the sector for you to go and learn from. Another 200 case studies currently in the pipeline. Our platform is constantly being updated, so I really encourage you to register for a it. There'll be a link in the chat for this. We have also recently launched a knowledge sharing vision and set of principles in collaboration with Ofwat to accelerate the adoption of innovative solutions across the water industry. A link to the vision will be available in the chat. Also, keep an eye on our LinkedIn and any email comms from us, as we'll be soon announcing the details of an interactive workshop in collaboration with Ofwat to explore this knowledge sharing vision further. I'd just like to give a warm welcome to our international audience members today. We have people joining us from Australia, Brazil, Canada, the Netherlands, and more. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you find the session valuable. Today, you can expect to gain insight into how the universal access point for water concept provides a standardised entry point for pressurised water pipes and can be used for inserting cameras, leak location arrays, repair solutions, and more. The UAP concept can also help water companies meet the challenging target of halving water leakage by 2050. These showcases are all about being able to learn a little bit more about the project and taking away those learnings to embed in your organisation. With over 3,700 people registered for these events, we are really proud of how they are helping to disseminate the vital knowledge surrounding water-based innovation projects and accelerate learning within the sector. That being said, we'll be launching a poll towards the end of this showcase to find out how interesting you found the information and also whether you are hoping to go away and use it afterwards. Please submit your answers when this comes through. You'll also get the chance to ask the project team any questions at the end of the session, so please make sure you keep putting your queries into the chat throughout today's presentation. On to today's session, I'm just going to run through the agenda and then introduce our speakers. So to start with, we have the introduction to speakers and then the importance of knowledge sharing. We'll then be moving on to setting the concept, followed by the project roadmap. We'll then have a short break, roughly around 15 minutes, before we come back for lessons learned, and then finally we'll go to questions and answers with the whole team. The speakers for today's showcase are myself, Ellis Collins from Spring. We've got Jeremy Heath, Innovation Manager and Upware Programme Lead on Water Leakage at SES Water. We've got Leo Carswell, Head of Technology at WRC. We've got Camilla De Lima, Consultant Engineer at WRC. We've got Mark Quested, Owner and Consultant at Fluid Consulting Limited. With that, I'll now hand over to Jeremy to start the presentation.
Good morning, everyone. Lovely to have you all join us here today. My job is to set a bit of the context behind what we're doing here. And I want to start by talking about why we share. What's the importance of sharing within our industry? You know, I consider myself really fortunate that I work in the water industry. We collaborate in ways that other industries don't do. We have a reputation for sharing our understanding and our learning. And I really enjoy going along to conferences and hearing other water companies stand up and share what they have done so that we can all learn together. In order to meet the challenges that the water industry are facing, you know, we really have to share experiences and knowledge again. We can't do this as individual water companies. And it's only through collaboration and cooperation between us that we're going to move forward at sufficient pace. We were the first water company to actually share showcases on Spring. Very proud of that, actually, I have to say. We're really pleased to continue that tradition today. So look, that's why we need to share. Let's start by addressing the kind of real concerns that are going on in the industry at the moment. And those of you that have heard me speak before, you'll know that I use this slide quite a bit at the moment. This comes from the National Infrastructure Audit. It was published in October 2023. And effectively what this is looking at is it's saying, what's the gap between how much water we have and how much water we need by 2050? And in their analysis, they said, look, we believe that there will be a shortfall of 4,000 megalitres per day. In fact, since that, they've done an update and they now go, actually, we think it's even more than that, 4,800 megalitres per day. To put that in context, that's the entire distribution input of Thames, Severn Trent and Anglian put together. That's the amount of water that we've got to find. Halving water, and in order to do that, there are three ways to do that. New supply and transfer, halving leakage, and then also reducing demand as well. Halving leakage is now a priority. Halving leakage has gone beyond being reputational or a regulatory issue. It's now a requirement. We need to do this in order to keep the water flowing to our customers. We don't have the options that other countries have used to do this. So massive mains replacement programs that other countries have used to severely reduce their water leakage. That's the last option under consideration. It's really expensive digging up our roads, and it's very disruptive as well. We're facing increasing challenges at the same time. So we're trying to drive down leakage, and yet at the same time, climate change is drying out the soils, and we're seeing massive mains failures in the summer as a result of soil dry out, and in the winter where we're getting the kind of winter events coming through. So it's a really challenging time for leakage at the moment. And it's becoming increasingly evident that reducing water leakage to this level, halving it by 2050, is going to be really, really challenging indeed. So how do we do it? So what we try and do is we try and look at all aspects of leakage, and we use the PALM acronym in order to describe that. You see, a lot of people go, oh yeah, there's a silver bullet for leakage. No, there is no silver bullet for leakage. In order to manage leakage properly, you've got to be able to do all four of these brilliantly. Stop the leakage breaking out in the first place. Become aware of where it's breaking out, and that may be in a geographic area. It may be on your distribution mains, on your trunk mains, on your storage reservoirs, in your customers' houses. We've got to be aware of where the leakage is actually happening so we can go and look for it. Then, of course, we've got to find it. That's a job in itself, actually locating the leakage out on our mains or again within a customer's property. And then finally, we've got to mend it and actually come up with repair solutions. I often say we still use the same repair solution that the Romans used, which is dig a big hole, cut out the bad bit and piece through. So our research has shown that most of the work that's going on, most of the innovation is actually in that awareness and location area. About 70% of company projects across the country are in those areas. Men solutions, that's the area with the lowest amount of research. It's really hard to bring in new innovations into that area for a number of reasons. But really interestingly, our regulator now uses this same palm analogy. And what happened with that is that when they asked us to put in our PR24, they said, look, break down your costs. Tell us how much you're going to spend in each of these areas. And so by putting those figures together, and these are all publicly available on company websites, we now know that 52% of the leakage spend is actually on repair. Well, only about 13% of research is in that area, 52% of spend. That's a huge discrepancy. And that means that we've got to come up with better ways of doing that. I did a recent survey of the water companies and I said, look, I want to know what's the innovation calls at the moment for leakage. And they went out and came back with a number of calls. I said, brilliant, fantastic. Now rank them. Tell me which ones are the most important. What was really interesting is straight away, the highest priority came out as being cheaper, quicker leak repairs. We've got to come up with better ways of mending our pipes. So how do we go about doing that? My son plays chess. He's pretty good at it. And when we play chess together, he regularly beats me. In fact, I can't remember the last time I beat him. What he does at times is he'll move a piece and I think, why are you putting that there? And then about 4 moves later, I'm suddenly in checkmate and I realise why he did that. You see, it's this idea of putting something on the board and going, I'm not quite sure how this is going to work, but I know that in about 4 or 5 moves time, I will need that. When we look at innovation, some of the times we're trying to solve problems that we've got right at the moment, but some of the times we look over the horizon and we say, okay, what are we going to need to solve in a few years' time? What's the problems that are going to be coming up? When we started doing this, we didn't know what the issue was going to be in terms of leakage and in terms of mend and everything like that. We started discussing this a couple of years ago, this project. The UAP is really one of these chess move ones where we said, okay, a few years back, look, we think that repairing pipes is going to be increasingly important to this industry. So therefore, how do we help do that? How do we help with the inspection, but also the repair and dealing with that side? And so we decided that, okay, we'll put a piece on the chessboard. We're going to see how this one works. And what's been really interesting is over the 2 years, a year of discussing it and then a year of actually working on the project, during that time, what's happened is there's been a dramatic swing in the desire for solutions in this area. And we've really seen the whole industry turn around and going, okay, yeah, we're pretty certain we've got awareness and location stuff now. We really need to focus upon mend. So what I'm doing actually is I'm actively setting up working groups around the country now to look at how we can streamline trials, not just of this, but of all kind of mend solutions as well, to try and get water companies collaborating and cooperating together in order to be able to do that. It's been hugely helpful using the Ofwat Innovation Fund. I have to say, I'm a big fan. It's dramatically increased the tempo and acceptance of innovation throughout the water industry. But what's interesting is a lot of the projects that come through are quite late TRL levels, technology readiness levels. When we looked at this one, we said, okay, this one's going to be a really early TRL. Okay, it's a deliberate move to use that fund to investigate potential solutions and justifications. What we've not done, as you'll see, is actually produce a UAP. This whole thing has been about designing it. The scope of the project was always to carry out the design work and then some additional assessments as well. And that mirrors closely how, I would do early TRL work in my own company. I would do an MVP. I would do a very simple project to see actually if there is a use case there. And as you hear about this process, you'll hear how we did that. It was a very collaborative process. We brought industry experts together. We utilised workshops and sprints to understand those. And it allowed us to be flexible and to adapt to the learning. So as we learned new stuff, we were like, okay, that means we've got to go in this direction. We were really encouraged actually by the amount of industry engagement. It was great turning up at these meetings and just seeing all these different people in a room, some from water companies, some from consultancies, some university students turning up as well to take part as well. And it was a real mix of people in that room trying to solve this problem. We made the decision when we put in the application to Ofwat that actually all of this would be IP free. The whole idea behind this is we want this to be accepted, and we know that the IP can actually sometimes cause a barrier to that. So we said, no, we want this to be completely free of ownership so that people can adopt it. I was very inspired by Volvo, which sounds a strange thing to say, but Volvo invented the seatbelt. And they said when they invented the seatbelt, they said, you know what, we're not going to put any IP on this because we think this is for everyone's benefit. Well, I'm not saying that we've got anything on that kind of scale, but that was certainly the spirit in which we did this, is saying, look, we don't want to hold this private, we want to share that IP. And the whole idea was this will allow easier adoption by industry. What did we set out to do? Well, the scope was purely to do that design. And then we have 4 work packages: vision and requirements, economic assessment, development of those designs, and then finally coming up and saying, okay, where do we take those? What's the preferred design? The next steps. And my colleagues who've worked on this with me are going to be taking you through that entire process. But very quickly, have we succeeded? Well, we've completed a thorough needs assessment for the UAP. We really understand what it needs to be able to do. We've developed 4 potential designs. And then what we did is we took those 4 designs and we refined them down. We said, okay, we've now got 2 candidate projects. We've got 2 that we really think summarise what we want to do with this UAP. We've identified a potential route to market. So what we've been able to do is go, actually, these designs, we can see complementary technologies that exist in the industry that have never been thought of as being useful for inserting things into the pipe in terms of robots and inspection devices. We think those can now be adapted. So we think our work will build upon existing equipment out there and say, look, we can take these, adapt those, and use those within the industry in order to solve this issue. So we're now going to be entering into discussions with manufacturers, and one of the reasons we're doing this webinar, and we're doing this slightly early because we've still got a few bits left to finish off on the project. But one of the reasons we're doing this webinar now is we want to be able to share this information because we're going to be entering into discussions with the manufacturers. And what I'm going to be asking them to do is, before we meet with you, is that you review this video. So I'll say it now. If you're one of the manufacturers who we're going to be talking to, thanks very much for actually watching this through. It's going to help our discussions an awful lot when we come there, because you're going to understand exactly what we've done, what the process was that we've gone through, and what the problem is that we're trying to solve. We're working with Spring as well to finalise the project, and we're actually using their knowledge transfer service. They're going to full package there, and that will help us in terms of getting all of that information out there as well. Let me just go back to the beginning and reiterate what we're doing this for. We've got a half leakage by 2050. If we don't do that, it's going to be a real struggle for our customers. The supply-demand gap is absolutely massive. We can't rely upon just awareness or location tools, the kind of traditional ones that we've used for leakage. We're certainly looking at prevent. So we're seeing network calming, we're seeing pressure reduction. But we've really got to come up with ways of mending pipes far, far better. That's going to mean insertion. That means putting things inside the pipes. And that's my dream, is that we will work with suppliers, we'll work with manufacturers who are producing these, and we will enable them to be able to put their robots, put devices down inside the pipe, swim along a pipe, and carry out a repair inside the pipe without disruption to customers, without having to dig up the road. We can do it quicker and easier. It will make such a huge difference to our repair mechanisms once we start to do that. That's the goal of where we're going to. And the work that we've done here on the UAP is literally that chess piece on the board going, we think we're going to need one of these when we get to that state where we have robots available and ready to go down our mains and fix our pipes and carry out inspections. That's the goal. That's what we've achieved. Thank you very much. I'm now going to hand over to my colleagues.
Good morning. My name's Leah. This is Camilla. We're going to use this section of the agenda to talk through the work that we've been doing as part of this project, the journey that we've been on, or the roadmap, as we call it on this slide here. So we're going to cover four areas, four aspects of the project. I'm going to talk first through item one. Camilla will talk about the economic assessment, and then we'll move on and I'll talk about development of the ideas and refinement of those ideas. We've got relatively limited time today, so we're going to give you a flavour for what the work is like. Everything you hear about and all of the detail has been documented in the reports that we've produced throughout this work, and they will all be held centrally by Spring. So if you want more detail, you want all the detail behind this, that will all be made available in time. And as Jess said, we're just wrapping up some of those. I'm not going to talk any more about setting the scene. Jess has set the scene, so we're going to jump straight into the project. So we're going to start by talking about current practice, vision challenges and specification. This is where we started just over a year ago. So this project's been running for just over a year. We started back in September. So good place to start is to talk about current practice. And Jess highlighted some of that. Current practice in terms of access points into our water networks within the UK water companies. Primarily, access points are fire hydrants. And as the name suggests, fire hydrants have a dedicated, very specific use, primarily for taking water out of the network. They were never designed for putting technologies into the network. There are variants, different types of fire hydrants, traditional hydrants, and more recently full bore hydrants, which help to go some way to increasing the accessibility into water networks. However, as the diagram on the left shows, fire hydrants are typically not located directly on top of the water main. They are on a leg, either a short leg or a long leg, to be away from the road. So to put a technology into the water main, you have a convoluted pathway to get into them. There are other access points that we use and do use to a certain extent, tapping tees that we can put onto the pipe. One of the big issues with tapping tees is you can tap them, but they have a very sharp edge, which is a big issue for tethered systems, in that you can damage the tether on those systems. The diagram at the bottom shows the Sahara leak location system, which has a bespoke access system. It's very good. It allows the deployment of a larger type technology, but it's expensive. It's bespoke. It's not something that could ever be rolled out on a very wide scale. Final picture on there, the top right hand side, shows a repair collar. And this is part of the concept of this project. There are thousands of repair collars that are being installed across the country every year to repair pipes under live conditions. Can you utilise that access to the water main and not just put on a repair collar, but put on a UAP at that point in time? So, as was said earlier, a lot of this project was around workshop and stakeholder engagement. And one of the first things we did on those workshops and stakeholder engagements back in October and November was to ask stakeholders, water companies, supply chain, academics, researchers, consultants, what was their vision for a UAP. And on the screen, I've summarised some of the feedback we had from that workshop. A really key point that was made in that first workshop was the project should focus on the core functionality of a UAP. Don't get distracted. Don't increase the complexity to try and encompass other devices, accessories, functionality beyond the core access. Leave that to the suppliers who will be delivering the technologies. They know their technologies, and in the future they will develop those additional solutions. Whether that's a solution for deploying a technology, capturing a technology, or whatever. So some of the key comments there in those bullet points are around the vision. So unlike fire hydrants, this should be for use by water companies and their contractors only. It should be low maintenance, it should be easy to install, it should work on compact materials, it should work in a standard chamber size, and it should reduce disruption for customers. Pretty obvious things, but it's a good point to start in terms of a vision. We also asked about barriers and challenges. And I think that's a really important thing, to get a wide group of stakeholders thinking about what might prevent or what might limit the application of this sort of technology. And there's a few key points here, and I'm not going to go through all of those on the screen. You can look at those as I'm talking. Some of the key ones here. So water quality comes up again and again. We're talking about installing a large number of new access points on the water network. One of the potential challenges is you're opening up your network. You have more points where you can access. So there's potential for potentially contamination, interference with the network, which you don't have at the minute. An associated point is around familiarity of the UAP. Currently, water companies run very robust processes for access into their networks. We're talking about opening up the network again, so there's a potential risk and challenge there. The final point I wanted to bring up on here was this point at the bottom around locations where pipes fail. If we're talking about putting in an access point where we do a repair, that repair is probably exactly the location where we want to understand the network better, because it's an area where the network has failed, where it's likely to fail again. The challenge potentially is that's probably in the middle of the road, in a busy junction. It's probably exactly the location where access back to utilise that UAP is probably difficult and logistically challenging. So there is a balance between access and utilisation. And that was a really good point that was made early on in the project. So, as part of this early workshop, we also did an exercise, a MOSCO analysis, and MOSCO stands for must-haves, should-haves, could-haves, and won'ts. And this is about identifying for the UAP what should be included, what could be included, and what shouldn't be included. And we did a big exercise there, lots of post-its. And from that, we refined that down and we developed a design specification for the UAP. And for each of those items that we developed on that design specification, we had either a preferred and a minimum requirement or just a minimum requirement. And I've highlighted some of the points here. And I'm not going to go through this. This is available, will be available as part of the reporting. But you can see some of the very obvious things around water quality, Regulation 31, some of the things around design features in terms of the access, the diameter of the access point. Things around installation, different pipe sizes, materials, cost. Cost was a really interesting one because actually installing hydrants, the hydrant itself is not a high value item. So we've specifically said that the cost should be associated with the quantitative or qualitative benefits that can be derived. I think the wrong angle would be to make a direct comparison with existing technologies. This is about enabling more from the network. And finally, health and safety is an obvious one. So a lot of detail in the design specification, which is available and will be hopefully utilised by manufacturers going forward. I'm going to pass over to Camilla to talk about the economic assessment.
So hello everyone, I'm going to spend now the next 10 minutes talking about the economic assessment of the universal access point. I will try to cover as much as I can, however I won't be able to enter into too many details because it was an extensive task. But if you have any doubts, just let me know that I can clarify anything by the end of this presentation. So the main objective of this work was to provide a comprehensive economic evaluation of the UAP for the water industry in the UK, with the focus on potential benefits, use cases, and demand estimates. So here it was a mixed approach using both qualitative and quantitative analysis for us to understand the feasibility of the UAP adoption in the most important perceived use cases by the water companies participant in these studies. So here, the first task was the qualitative analysis, which was a mix of surveys and scoring systems in which we wanted to understand and assess the perceived benefits of the UAP in the water sector. Regarding the use cases, we wanted to understand the most important UAP applications. So for that, we first gave to the respondents a long list of potential benefits of the UAP, and they needed to score them in low extent, non-extent, and large extent. Regarding the use cases, we provided a list of 11 UAP use cases, and they needed to rank them by importance and impact. The second task was a quantitative analysis, and here we wanted to achieve numbers. We wanted to achieve UAP demand estimates in both an annual perspective and also a total market size perspective. We can understand this part as a long-term perspective in a 20 years horizon. To do this demand estimation, we used a range of theoretical components. We've done also some consultations with our internal WRC experts to help us raise a calculation modeling, a calculation methodology for each of the use cases. And also we used some data provided from the PR24 to be able to achieve these numbers. The demand estimation considered industry uptake scenarios from 0.1% to 20%. And here we can understand this as different levels of market penetration. So when we first calculated the 11 use cases, we reached a number that was corresponding to 100% of opportunities for UAP deployment. And we use this number as a background to calculate these different levels of market adoption, of market penetration. Additionally, we raised some costs of current alternatives to help benchmarking the UAP in the future, to help guide a pricing strategy in the future. So here I'm going to just cover a little bit about the results of the qualitative analysis, the benefit assessment, and the use case ranking. So we have a table here that shows us the most important perceived benefits and the most important UAP applications. So first here in the first part of the table, we can see that the respondents that had a strong view that the UAP could facilitate the use of innovative technologies and techniques to facilitate renewals and repairs. Also, they had a strong view that the UAP could facilitate non-intrusive repairs and renewals, minimize disruption and consequently cost. And last, improve leak detection. The least perceived benefit was here that the UAP could easier pipe isolation for repairs. Regarding the applications, the use cases, the top three use cases, the better ranked ones were pipe condition assessment, access for robotic sensors and robotic devices and sensors, and network leakage. So the installation of UAPs within districted metered areas to improve leakage management. The least important use case was considered here for new development. So the respondents had thought that the UAP could have a huge positive impact in the long term, but not really in an immediate perspective. So why have we done this qualitative analysis? It was to guarantee that the demand estimates, that the numbers reflect a real world industry priority and is rooted in actual needs. So we didn't want that our numbers, our UAP demands to be just rooted in hypothetical situations or very rooted analysis, based in modeling and calculations. We wanted actually to bring the views of the water companies into the methodology for this calculation modeling. Just going to cover quickly here the results of the quantitative analysis, the demand estimate. So we have two tables here. The first one, the top one, refers to the total market size for the UAP, and here is summing up the 11 use cases, and the second one is related to the potential annual demand, again summing up all the annual demand from the list of the use cases. So we calculated individually these two tables for each of the use cases. You can see also that the estimate types, we have low, central, and high estimates. And this is basically because some of the variables given to us, they were given in ranges. So it was plausible to calculate also in this range from low to high. These total numbers that you see inside the red circle, they correspond to the total market size, as I said before, the 100% of opportunity that you have for the UAP adoption. However, it's utopic, it's a bit unrealistic to think that every opportunity for an UAP deployment is going to be absorbed by the market. So we used initially this number just to, as a background to calculate the percentage of industry uptake. So this black arrow helps us to understand this meaning. So as you go towards 20% industry uptake, you have a higher industry penetration, which would be a situation of appetite for investment, appetite for innovation, high investments on infrastructure, stakeholder engagement, technological advancements, etc. As you go towards 0.1% uptake, you have a lower industry penetration. We have here some insights of these numbers. So first, at a high estimate and 20% industry uptake, which would be the best case scenario, the total potential market size could reach nearly 370,000 UAPs. A moderate market and market penetration, considering central estimates and 5% uptake, could yield a market of 70,000 UAPs. However, if the UAP aligns with, as I said before, appetite for innovation and high investments on infrastructure, this uptake could extrapolate the upper bound estimates. This could extrapolate the 20% uptake, reaching higher estimate values that could reach the total market size, which is 1.3 million UAPs, and that's a very high number. So we have here just some conclusions drawn from these two assessments. So first, we can see that the use cases related to proactive maintenance in distribution mains were perceived as the most important applications for UAPs. And they together accounts for nearly 68% of the total market size. And this tells us that we have potential for moderate to high adoption of UAP, especially if it aligns with good market conditions. But of course, adoption will depend on competitive pricing, especially during early stage deployments. So it's important to benchmark the UAP, to use the cost of alternatives that we've raised in this study to guide a future pricing strategy. We've noticed also that the perception of UAP benefits varies across water companies, reflecting different operational needs. So we need to keep talking to the water companies to guarantee that their specific needs, or at least the most common ones, are covered in the final design. And as the qualitative study told us, priority should be given to high impact areas such as pipe condition assessment and leakage management. And as a next step, consultation with future UAP suppliers and stakeholders is needed to refine the design and to set up a pricing strategy. So that's with me now. I'm going to hand over to Leo again. Okay,
Good.
here.
Brilliant. Thank you, Camilla. So we're now going to talk about the main part of the work that we've done, which is the development of the design ideas. I've talked already about stakeholder workshops and engagement of a wide range of different organisations and people. I wanted to make the point here that we actually involved quite a few graduates at WRC, so relative youngsters to the industry. And it was really refreshing, the alternative, challenging thinking that they brought to this. I think sometimes we forget that we know an awful lot about the industry and we're a bit blinkered. So a key point that actually people who don't know about the industry come with fresh ideas can be really useful to this sort of idea development process. So the objectives for our design development work was develop a number of design ideas based on the specification, engage with stakeholders. WRC developed the initial ideas, but this wasn't about WRC just developing ideas, it was about stakeholders to review, challenge, score, and ultimately agree on the aspects and the designs that we would take forward. I'm going to talk through the 4 ideas that we developed to an initial stage, and we're going to go through each of those in turn now. So, talk through each of these on turn. There's a slide on each of them. They're all a bit different at this stage. Remember, we're coming up with different ideas. We're trying to challenge the norm. We're trying to think of different things to do. First one here is a double angled access design. So here we have, in this format here, it's a repair clamp type format with 2 45-degree angles into the pipe to allow you to go upstream and downstream from your access points. This design incorporates some ball valves, but we also had another design which had different types of valves, and it has a access chamber at the top, so you would insert the device at the top and then you either divert it upstream or downstream. I'll summarise for each of these designs some of the feedback we had at this stakeholder workshop. So we did a second stakeholder workshop where we looked at all these designs. So if I just pick up some of the key points from this one, people were saying, do you need such an extreme angle to go upstream and downstream, 45 degrees? There was a lot of discussion around cost and complexity and size of this design. You cannot put in a quadrina type flow meter through this. You haven't got a 90-degree angle, so you haven't got that access with this one. There was also a valid point around it's quite a rigid design. So if you were going to insert this, put this on as a repair clamp, you're potentially, any stresses or strains in your pipe, you could be potentially causing further damage. I'll come to the scores and the ultimate views on each of these designs in a minute, but let's keep going through each of them. So design B. So they're completely different. This design is based around actually putting a slot on the crown of the pipe along the pipe, and then using a ball valve and using the central hole through the centre of the ball valve to provide some directional capacity, either upstream or downstream of the pipe. This provides some direction. Again, this is shown as a repair clamp type design, but like all of these designs, they could be manufactured as a piece that is cut into the pipe with flanges. Some of the key points that were raised in discussion on this one. So, how do you make the slot under pressure? That was one of the challenges and one of the questions, and something we did look at later in the project, and I will cover in a bit more detail. Concerns over putting that type of slot, that type of access on PVC or AC pipes. Installation, again with the slot, would require specialist training, and there was a very valid point around a ball valve may not be considered as suitable, and you may need a secondary valve on top of that for long-term deployment, or some way of locking it off. The ball valve wouldn't be considered as appropriate valve type. So that's design B. Let's move on to design C. So this one, again, quite different. This one focused very much on the issue with a cut edge. So if you tap into a pipe, if you drill out a pipe, you end up with a very sharp edge on the host pipe. How do you deal with that? This approach, again, is shown as a repair collar type approach, but it has a sleeve that goes down and protects whatever you're going to put in from that cut edge. This design here has a valve that sits on top of the sleeve. It also shows some potential optional tapping locations. Some of the feedback we had on this design here: small, simple, people like that. The valve needs to be bespoke in this current iteration of this. There is some modifications needed to the valve, so there's some changes done into the valve. The tappings, people thought they probably weren't needed, and a very valid point: the sleeve that is put in, which would be metal, potentially stainless steel or bronze, which will protect the pipe. If that is a cylinder, in essence, when that's inside the pipe, the arc of the pipe, the internal arc or curvature of the pipe, means that you have got a flat edge in a curved internal surface. So potential turbulence, potential disruption of the flow within the pipe. So some further thoughts needed on this design. And the final design, which is a bit of a modification of the two previous ones, was a directional valve which included cut edge protection. To this one, again, you can see from the diagram, it shows a sleeve that is rotated with a directional handle. This again shows a repair collar type design, which would bolt around the pipe. Some of the comments about this design were, you've got some dead water in there, potentially creating turbulence. With a deep chamber, the actual angling of the device may require quite a large chamber if you're at depth. It looks bespoke, it looks expensive to manufacture. There's no air valve, and looks like quite a lot of development work. I think you can get the gist of what the view was within that workshop on this design. So we can summarise those, and part of the workshop was assessing these ideas. So we broke out into groups. So when we met and we mixed people up, make sure that all voices were heard within those workshops. Each of those groups assessed and reviewed each of those designs, and I'll show a little bit more detail about that in the next slide. But what you can see here is, at a basic level, designs B and C scored almost identically, but they stood out as the two designs that people felt had the most potential at this stage to take forward. Interestingly, one of the groups really liked design A, but the majority of them didn't. We can look at these results in a little bit more detail, and I'm presenting this The idea is not that you can see all of the detail. So four designs here, and what this shows is an assessment of the designs against our requirements specification. So we're assessing them against each of those lines in our requirements specification, and the data here and the green and the red bars show, the green ones show, do those people who attended that workshop, do they feel this design either meets or has the potential to meet that item on the design specification? And green line means yes, they are confident that it could meet that minimum requirement. Red line means actually we're not sure or we don't think it can. And what you can see here is that B and C have more green than A and D. There are significant areas still of red lines where the stakeholders still have some doubts and some concerns whether those designs could meet the minimum requirements of our specification. And those are primarily around the more operational aspects of our design. And I think a lot of that was to do with, this is an idea, and we are many steps away from an operational prototype or a design that can be actually tested. So there was a lot of uncertainty there, but there were some key aspects that needed to be taken forward in those two designs. So recommendations. Our recommendation at this stage in the project was designs B and C. So design B is the oversized ball valve, and design C is the cut edge protection, should be taken forward or as preferred designs. We said originally in the project we would take one design forward, but actually we felt that there was value in taking two. There is some work to do on those designs around the diameter and the access around 180mm pipes, which are the majority of the pipes within the distribution network. They should both be taken forward in two formats, both to allow for live repair, insertion, but also flanged fittings that can be used for cutouts where you have no flow or on a new main. And finally, some of the design features and considerations which were really highlighted in the workshops were around, as I said, operational aspects, maintenance, Reg 31, those sorts of things needed to be considered further. The two designs that we parked at this stage, A and D, we wouldn't take them any further, but they're all well documented and they could be picked up by the supply chain in the future. There may be certain aspects of those that people think are useful to take forward, so they are not lost, they are documented in the future. Cool. I'm going to move on and talk about the final bit of work that we've been doing here, the most recent bit of work, which is around taking those two ideas and refining them into the outputs from this project. The objective of this work was to refine those down to a single preferred design to take forward. And as I said before, actually, and I hope you can understand, these are quite different designs. They're actually coming at this problem from different angles, and actually they're quite brilliant, they're quite useful, and we felt there was value, and we have the capacity in the project to take these both forward and develop them both, which I think added value to the project. So we'll talk a little bit about how we've taken those forward and how they've evolved. Now, obviously, relatively short amount of time here, I'm going to show some pictures and talk you through them. There is an awful lot more documentation that will be published within the final outputs from the report. A lot of the detail will remain in those. But hopefully I can give you a flavour for what we have been doing. Before I go on and talk about these designs, there was a bit of work that we did that wasn't in the original programme. And this was around looking at these technologies here. These are live tapping technologies. And it became evident as we went through the project that these technologies were really interesting, important and relevant to our work, and I'll explain why. Technologies you've got on the screen actually are commercially available technologies that show enable live coring, drilling, milling of a pipe for inserting, in this case, line stop valves. And as you will probably understand from what I said before, actually doing that live access to the water main, milling a hole and drilling a hole becomes really important. The technologies, the one on the top left is a Mueller design, permaseal valve, and the hydrostop below that actually allow a coring of the full diameter of the pipe. So the whole diameter of the pipe, essentially the pipe is actually separated into two, but it allows the full diameter, which of course for a UAP would allow on an 80mm or 100mm a equal sized T to be added under live conditions, which is quite an interesting concept. The technology on the right is slightly different, advanced valve technology, EZ valve. This one demonstrates milling technology. This is actually, they do this by rotating the mechanism round the circumference of the pipe. It's not actually what we actually need for the technologies we develop. We actually want to mill across the crown of the pipe, but it's live under pressure milling of a pipe under controlled conditions. So these are really interesting technologies. They're enabling technologies. I think none of these manufacturers have really thought about how they might be adapted or applied to a UAP type scenario, but they are definitely of value to our project. We did a gap analysis on this. We've looked at these in quite some detail, and we will be talking to the suppliers in more detail as well. We haven't adapted our designs based on these. That wasn't the idea of what we did. The idea was to learn from this and have some answers to some of the challenges around how we do live access. So, with not an awful lot of time left in this session, I'm going to talk about the two designs that we have left. So design C first. So this is the one with the cut edge protection. So the design evolved following the stakeholder workshops. So some things that were really looked at, focused on, was ease of manufacturing cost and installation. And there was a real emphasis on the directional control aspect being pushed to the manufacturers of technologies that would be deployed. So we weren't going to look at the directional control, but we were going to see how we could manufacture this and how it could be installed quicker. And we rolled back from the bespoke manufacturing. So you'll see the valve is now a standard valve, doesn't have any bespoke manufacturing. So some diagrams here. I know you can't look at all the detail here and haven't got enough time, but again, all of the detail is within the reports. We've got two variants of this design. The key aspect within this design here is, let me just find my notes. So we have a sleeve housing, which is the pinky type, in the blue box in the middle, which is the pinky type bit of the design. The yellow is actually the sleeve that protrudes down into the pipe. We then have a valve that sits on top of the design, which is a standard valve. We then have an insertion housing and a T-bar, which is used for under pressure insertion of the sleeve. Lots of detail there. I'm not going to go through all of that at the moment, but you can see that allows for an under pressure insertion of this sleeve once the coring has been made. We have worked through each of the design aspects of this. If I look at the next slide, you can see a slight modification of what we've got here. So this one shows the sleeve housing, but a greater depth of the sleeves housing, which allows for monitoring points, so access into this. Essentially, this is a round structure, so you can put as many monitoring points as you want. So you could air release, you could have some sensing. You could have all sorts of things added onto this design. But the other aspects in terms of the standard valve that bolts on top and the access chamber above that are completely standard. This design can be modified for the whole range of size applications that we've been looking at. The challenge is always the smaller sizes. The 100s and the 80s are the more challenging applications. But this has been evolved, so it will work at the smaller sizes. Some of the individual components, sleeve housing, the installation housing and the T-bar, they are relatively simple components that could be made relatively low cost. Second design was the oversized ball valve. Here show general layout. This one shows the design on a larger pipe. You can tell that from the size of the valve in comparison to the pipe. This is again a repair collar, clump around repair collar. The design has evolved slightly, but not as much as the previous design. See the handle providing the direction up and down, and the slot, which isn't shown on this design, but the slot would run along the crown of the pipe. This can be used across the different designs. Lost the presentation. We're almost at the end. It's all right, I can keep talking. So this design can be used across the range of sizes from DN80 up to DN400. Slight modifications to the design at the smaller sizes. It becomes, again, with all of these designs, slightly easier at the larger sizes. I just have some of the individual components here show how that design comes together. Some of the manufactured components around the clamp and the fitting. The ball valve is a standard ball valve. So I think we're probably almost out of time. So I just really wanted to wrap up with two final slides. First of all, to say in terms of the output, we've developed two different designs. They've been documented. They are to a stage where a manufacturer can pick them up and start their design work. They cover both that repair piece and also that flange piece. The other two designs that were developed to a lesser developed stage are ready also for people to utilise. Finally, a key message that I think we learned along the journey is that manufacturers of this sort of technology have their own way of doing things and taking things forward. They may be specialists in using certain types of material. They may have certain ways of value engineering things. They may have certain preferences in terms of addressing different market sizes. We're not experts in that, and it would be wrong for this project to go any further than it did. So we were exactly right in where we decided that we were going to stop this project and hand over to the supply chain. And those bullet points really just highlight the sorts of things that we would expect and we think will need to happen next. So there'll be further design that will be directed by market size and cost. Some of the detailed modelling, the finite element analysis type modelling needs to be done. Prototypes need to be developed and tested and refined. There'll be approvals, and some of the work that Camilla talked about will need to be refined. Some of that economic assessment to see the market size. I think that is the final slide. That's been an awful lot of detail I appreciate in 40 minutes, but I'll say it again, everything is documented within the reporting, and Jez and Mark will be out seeing suppliers, so please engage with us.
Hello everyone, welcome back from the break. We're going to kick off the next section with some lessons learned. To start the section, I'll hand you over to Mark.
Thank you. Hi everybody. The UAP project was never going to complete the design. We were assessing the process, as Jez spoke about, up to TRL 4. So our responsibility really was to provide all the information and do some of the heavy lifting for everybody, and answer some key questions. So does the industry need a UAP, which has been touched on before? Can it be made? And will the water industry install it? So within the scope, we have the economic assessment, which Camilla's talked about, the design specification, which Leo's spoken about, and the designs as well, the potential designs that meet the specification that we developed. So what went well? Right, a lot of the good work came from the bid preparation. The leadership team came together at that point, and we have a lot of experience. I think over 100 years experience between us We developed the bid and the budget very well. The scope was limited, as Jez spoke about, without any IP claims, which meant we could share information more readily. And we developed a risk register that remained live throughout the project. At the bid stage, we showed the organogram there with Jeremy as the project lead. I was appointed as the project manager, with WRC providing the technical inputs to the project. In reality, it was a lot more organic than that. So I got involved in the technical aspects, and WRC managed some of the project because they were undertaking the bulk of the technical work. So what really went well in a nutshell, we were all outcome focused. We had a shared vision of what we wanted to do, how we wanted to do it, and that really was born at the bid stage. The team was instrumental, as you might imagine, but in amongst the experience and the skills, people like Camilla and the rest of the team from WRC were brought in some new ideas and really challenged our thinking, which was fantastic. We worked as one, and we supported the project with an online portal, which this is the front screen of. So it contained various different areas, so a document repository, so we could share information between us, risk registers, contact databases, all that sort of good stuff, the project plan. And probably used most actively was a sort of a Kanban board for meetings, to record the minutes and track each to completion. So here's an example here. So on the left, we would record tasks, and then as we progress them, it would move towards the right. We'd sort of drag and drop, and within that we could have discussion threads, shared documents, that sort of thing. So that was really invaluable, and those meetings were only half an hour a week. So a quick and easy way of recording minutes was very useful. So yeah, industry engagement. I mean, the guys have talked about that extensively, but it really was central to the project and the outputs that we came to. Effectively, the industry created the specification and audited the designs for us. So very highly consultative. We held 2 workshops with very good engagement in both. This showcases part of the dissemination of the UAP, but also the economic assessment questionnaire, and it was a form of consultation, and our project steering group, the water companies that got involved in the project, they were really useful and supportive of the project itself. And lastly, we talked extensively and openly. We had no IP, we could talk openly. We listened intently to what we were being told by the industry, and we considered it and processed it. And as was said before, we used the Moscow analysis to get all of that wealth of information and sort of structure it in a way that we could use it and create the design specification that Leo talked about. So then the Thunderbolt came, where we learned of the line stopping technologies, which on initial assessment we agreed that we would pause what we were doing. It led to a chain of events where we researched the technologies that were out there. We evaluated them against our specification, and ultimately we changed the way we were going to finish the project. Leo talked about there being 2 designs going forward, and are assessing and talking to the manufacturers of these technologies, which we universally agreed could lead to cheaper development of the UAP. It's a modification rather than new product design. It could be quicker to market because of that, and the industry would end up with one fitting that serves multiple purposes. So the revised plan was really to focus on the outputs of the project, the design specification, or the reports that Leo's spoken about. That was key moving forward. That we wouldn't select the single design, that we would present our two designs, design C, B and C, and these other technologies. And we would then hold conversations with those manufacturers to help them understand the outputs from our project and help them towards hopefully taking it on board. So no project works really well from scratch. What went wrong? Time. we were a bit ambitious to think that we could do all this within 12 months. We started a little late, later than planned. We hadn't taken into account that we were approaching the summer holidays, so we ended up starting in September rather than mid-July. But so we've caught up a little bit on that, but not entirely. It's a small project, and we had all sorts of different things happening to the team members, which I won't bore you with. But each of them had a small effect on progress. It only takes one person to be out, and progress is disrupted. So the other point really was the economic assessment. We delayed sending out the questionnaire because we recognised that the water companies were preparing their June returns for Ofwat, and we didn't want to be asking them for an awful lot of information and data at the same time. So we delayed that, but that gave us an opportunity to refine the questionnaire and make sure it was really focused on what we needed. So with, as I said before, with the line stopping technology, that did cause us a little bit of a delay, whilst we considered the impact of these technologies and how to take it forward. So in summary, we got the budget right. That was fine. We had a small contingency budget which was there to help us. So that worked really well. Time was a bit of an issue. We're now 3 months after when we should have finished, but we started 2 months late. So that kind of explains that. But because we've produced the two designs and potentially we have that quicker way to market through the modification of line stopping technologies, we believe that the outcomes make that worth it. Thank you very much.
Okay, that's lessons learned finished. We're now going to head into the Q&A section. During the session, please keep asking questions. Even if we don't get round to answering them in this session, they can go up in a written format alongside the case study on our Spring platform. Okay, to start with, we've got a question from John Myers. I think Jez probably be the best one to answer this question. John said, "This is such brilliant work, SES. I have no points to make on the excellence I hear. More generally, on us, a team of 60+ people here, I notice that sometimes we use the word innovation when we mean invention. That's fine, but invention saves no money. In fact, invention just costs time, opportunity lost, and didn't make money, maybe. Only in a successful rollout and cross-industry sharing do we save the ROI first, and then save the actual profit once broken even, and do it as fast and as visibly and honestly as possible, so money wasters are closed down or paid for by our money savers. I wonder if we need to tighten up a little in that more sort of a return as profit to bill payers and of true novating of known excellence to the next applications. Maybe some percentage of this we're seeing brilliantly today that SES is doing brilliantly today about its invention. When Camilla and Neil and Jez talk about how we have such will collaborate across all of our companies and give each other for free our pre-invented will, it's the best bit where the cash tills start to bring fast and the bank balances start to refill, then fill. I'd like to see the second or third use of inventions begin to constantly measured, published and cast on a leaderboard across all 17 water companies as the word innovation. There's quite a lot to unpack there. Would you want to read it? Or,
John, so thank you very much for that. That's a really long question, but a really interesting one. So I think let me just address in terms of that kind of return on investment side as well. And there's two bits to this. So there's water companies who are billing customers, and in terms of how we give benefit back to customers. And then there's also supply chain as well. The easier bit is for supply chain. They want to see a return on investment in terms of they are selling bits of kit. And that's kind of what we've looked at with this, is that this is going to be a commercial product that they will be able to manufacture. And what we wanted to do, particularly with the economic assessment and everything like that, is to say how many units would be produced and that side of it. I think, though, you're far more concerned, from what I read, about the effect that has upon our customers. And when we look at innovations and inventions like this, the purpose behind that is to directly affect the service that our customers receive. So it's less so about their bill. That will be reflected in the longer term as we go through price reviews. But our regulator quite rightly pushes us to say, right, you must maintain or increase the service you deliver to customers. So where does the UAP come into that? One of the things that we know our customers are concerned about is interruptions to supply and leakage. So one of the areas that we primarily see the UAP for is to reduce those interruptions and to repair leaks quickly. I'm doing a piece of work at the moment where I'm looking at repair times. I'm doing it within my own company, but also with other companies as well. And we're looking at how long it takes from when we say, right, we know where a leak is, to how long it takes to carry out that repair. That's one of the things that customers ring in about. Why is there water still running down the street? And there could be a number of reasons for that. It could be there's another contractor working in that road. It's difficult for us to come in. It could be a really difficult main to repair. One of my colleagues was telling me he saw an excavation in Trafalgar Square. The excavation was probably about 10 feet deep. The water pipe you could see just about bubbling away at the bottom there, and every other cable, duct, pipe that you can imagine across the top of it. Imagine the cost of actually doing that excavation and the complexity of doing that excavation. Imagine if we could simply go to a road nearby to Trafalgar Square, insert something into the pipe that then swims through, comes around the corner, finds that leak, carries out the repair internally, and then goes back. That's the dream. That's where we want to get to. What that will do is that's going to lower the cost for our customers. It's going to increase our repair times in terms of, decrease the repair times, but increase the way in which we carry out those repairs quickly. And it's going to solve our leakage problems at the same time. So those are the benefits that we then pass on to customers. And as we reduce the cost of repairing, that will have an effect upon bills in the long term as well, as we go through price reviews and things like that. I'd love to pick up with you. You know, you've got some great points there, John. So if you want to contact me, I'd love to have a chat with you and kind of explain a little bit more. I think I've given you a partial answer there, and I'm sure we can have a longer conversation.
Thank you for that. The next question came in from Ian Small, and it says, how's the supply chain been engaged in this design stage? Having skipped forward, and Jason's question above that was something in the chat. Could we have shortcut this process? So Jason's statement in the chat is above on the spreadsheet. Jason has said, I think referring to the different designs, there's a manufacturer that currently produces, albeit currently in limited non-form range, a flange valve with a bevel gear to the spindle, making for easier above operation, reducing chamber requirements. So yeah, then Ian's question was in response to that, sorry.
Do you want me to pick up? Yeah. I'll pick up Jason's question first of all about existing technologies. And Jason, you're 100% right, and I didn't include in the presentation. There's quite a few technologies that are available, clamp-on repair type technology, clamp-on teeth, which fulfil some of the requirements of the need. What they don't do is address the problem of the cut edge. So you can put a clamp on, and you can drill a hole, but you've still got a cut edge. So the reason why we took those two designs forward was because one of them had the sleeve, which was covering the cut edge, and that is aligned very much with some of those existing technologies. So some of the ideas that we've developed won't necessarily go forward in the format that we have presented. They may be modifications to existing technologies, and I think that's all the better, really. So those companies that you mentioned, those companies that have those existing technologies, they are exactly the sort of companies that we are going to be talking to on this project to see how their technologies can be adapted to give both cut edge protection, but the slightly more full bore, because that's one of the issues at the moment. Those technologies don't provide the access.
And I think just going on the supply chain bit, we did involve supply chain. In fact, they were invited along to the workshops. They turned up, so we had people from supply chain there as well. What was interesting is that wasn't just the manufacturer's side. The suppliers that we also had in the room were the ones that actually make the kit that goes down the pipe, and they had some very, very interesting viewpoints. They were the ones that were going, well, no, you can't do it like that because of. In fact, they were the ones that really highlighted the danger of the cut edge. I remember one of them saying that every time they turn up, they end up with shredded cables because they're catching them on that cut edge and things like that. So yeah, the supply chain was involved in the workshops as we did those, and their input was vital.
Thank you both for those answers. That was really great. Next question that's here is from Ivan. They've said, thank you for the interesting work. You mentioned that one of the main objectives is to incorporate robots, though this seems to be a distant goal. In the meantime, the most pressing need is to enhance pressure, acoustic and water quality monitoring. Have you considered the design of UAPs specifically for this purpose? Additionally, fire hydrants are underutilised infrastructure. What about retrofitting fire hydrants, such as upgrading chamber covers and improving collaboration with fire and rescue services to use them as a monitoring infrastructure?
Yeah, I'll pick that one up. So, yeah, morning, Ivan. Nice to see you or hear from you. Yeah. Firstly, let's talk about the robots bit. When we first started this, and it was literally 2 years ago, I think, that I started first discussing this and going through and saying, look, I think this is going to be a project. Repair was, yeah, it wasn't on the radar really much at all. In the last 2 years, talking with the leakage managers, it is a massive area now. And you know, let's go back to that awareness, location, and mend bit of palm. Every company is trying to drive down the time because effectively, once a leak breaks out, that's the clock running. Okay, you've got to repair that as quickly as you possibly can. And at the moment, the feedback that I'm receiving from the leakage managers is they know of the tools for awareness, they know of the tools for location. I agree with you, and I know you're going to be saying, yeah, but they're not doing them all. No, completely. Those are on rollout at the moment, and companies are trialing and rolling out awareness and location. But there is a lot of tools, and there's a lot of material, and there's a lot of, you know, devices available in those areas. At the moment, it's more of a deployment issue than it is actually about inventing them. And in fact, innovating in those areas. Now, that's not to say we won't see innovation in those areas. We're seeing some great new stuff coming through. But it's far more, there's loads of things in that area. That's why the leakage managers are now starting to focus on mend, because they're going, okay, I've got tools in that area, but I don't have anything really in the mend area at all. In terms of how can I reduce those mend times, I need more tools in this area. And that's what's really pushed this, is with the desire to drive down those mend times. And I think, you know, as I said, I was talking about that example in Trafalgar Square. I think where we see these technologies come through first is in the difficult to repair jobs. And those will be the primary jobs that you start off with, and then it will trickle down into the rest of the industry as well. Let's go on to the use of hydrants. Firstly, yeah, I've been using hydrants all my time. You know, I've been in the industry 30 years. Hydrants are for getting water out from pipes. That's what they were originally designed for. They're a certain fitting. They're designed to be used by the fire brigade as well. I know from my times of deploying out loggers and things like that, if there's a fire, my logger is going to be taken off as quickly as possible. And therefore, they are dual purpose. There's always that danger if you're using fire hydrants that something may happen to it, because they're not exclusive for our use. In addition, they are always a restriction because they're designed for taking water out for fires. That's a standard fitting. And therefore, everything that you're doing is going, that entry point has got to be the same regardless. And therefore, that's always going to be my restriction on what I can put into a hydrant. So we came at this from a different way and going, okay, can we make that
different. What happens if we think about this in a different way and we have a larger entry point, and what will that do? And finally, with a hydrant, again, what that doesn't do is it doesn't get away with that cut edge. If you're going to be dropping in a hydrant to use it, yeah, and you're doing an under pressure T in order to drop in a hydrant because you need one at that point, again, you're going to be still having that cut edge at the bottom, which is going to be causing issues. It's really interesting. I said we had the suppliers who actually drop things into pipes, and they came along to the workshop. Not one of them turned around at the workshop and went, oh, hang on, surely the answer is just an under pressure, is a through bore. Okay, they're looking for different solutions as well. I think through bores are excellent. I will go on record of saying that. I think they're fantastic bits of kit. They have certain applications they're brilliant for, and we will always be using those in certain ways. But I think they are complementary to what we're doing here. They will provide a certain type of solution for a certain size. This will provide that other solution as well that goes forward. And I can see these being used in complementary with through bore as well.
Perfect. Thank you for answering that. The next question has came from Tim Evans. They've said, has the project got to the point where manufacturers can now pick it up and confidently invest in developing products? Or is there still uncertainty about requirements, specifications, and water company appetite that would make this premature?
Going to look at WRC.
Yeah, no, I think Tim, it's a great question. And Tim, and for those on the call, Tim's been involved in the project, and it's a good challenge to make. I think, Tim, you're very right. This is not about this project ending and passing over the dossier of information to suppliers and saying, good luck, and we'll see the product in 6 months' time. This is about continuing that relationship. And of course, there are uncertainties and developments that are needed. Anyone who thought that you could bottom out every single question and uncertainty, anyone who thinks that you can get a definite answer from the water industry about buying, selling, using products, just has not worked in the water industry before. There is a lot of uncertainty here. What this project was trying to do was reduce those uncertainties and build confidence. And there is more of that journey still to do. And there is a lot of meetings and discussions that happen to take people on that journey. I just hope we've got the foundations and we've got some really solid evidence and confidence from this project. Jez, I don't know if you want to add anything.
So I think the other bit as well is we've not just developed a UAP design here. The other bit is we've developed a process as well. And I think that's the really interesting bit is I've been involved, in the industry for 30 years. Water companies in the past have tend to acted by themselves. You may get small collaboration groups formed, but it tends to be individual companies. What we've seen with the Ofwat Innovation Fund is a great bit of actually bringing companies and working together. Fantastic. But again, that's generally been later TRL processes. What we've done here for the first time is done collaborative work on an early TRL and brought everybody in together. And that's why I was really keen that Mark did his lessons learned a bit and said what worked and what didn't work, because actually part of what we've done is develop a process as well for doing early TRL work collaboratively in the water industry. And part of what we're doing here is sharing. It's not just the results of actually the project, it's sharing the process as well and what worked well for us. And you know what, if you're going to do the same as us and do something like this, what lessons you can learn from us as well.
Thank you for that. There's actually another question that came in from Tim as well. It said, on a related note, is there a way of avoiding the VHS versus Betamax scenario where directly competing incompatible products hit the market and companies who back what turns out to be the wrong horse end up wasting their money?
Yeah, really good. Again, really good question, Tim. So VHS Betamax is, for those, I'm just recognising there's going to be younger generation like minutes looking at me like, well, what is the VHS Betamax thing? Okay, VHS and Betamax were two competing technologies that were videotaping. Okay, and there were two separate video players that came out, one with one size of tape, which was Betamax, and one with another size of tape, which was VHS. And people went out and bought Betamax and went, yeah, it's going to be fantastic. And then 5 years down the line, there was nobody doing Betamax anymore, and you ended up with this useless bit of kit and a load of cassette tapes and such like. So how do we make sure that doesn't happen? I think for me, one of the interesting bits is, so I do a lot of work in the Internet of Things. Okay, so this is how we do communications out in the field. There are about 3 or 4 competing technologies out there at the moment in that. And I can remember being at a conference a while ago, comms conference, and I was asked, do we see these as being competing? And I said, no, to me, this is not VHS Betamax. In fact, I used exactly your words, Tim. I said, to me, it's Apple Android. Okay, now Apple and Android are 2 competing technologies. but they have slightly different use cases, slightly different advantages, slightly different uses in terms of how they operate. And so they actually coexist quite happily, solving slightly different problems and slightly different solutions for people. And that's where I see this going. I agree with you completely. We need to make sure that we don't try and push another technology out. And that's why let's go back through bore hydrants. Certainly they provide some solution there. But in addition, this is complementary to it. And I would argue, and I would, again, when we're talking with the manufacturers, is don't go down the we will rule the world route. You're saying these are complementary technologies and make sure that that fulfills this need, but the UAP fulfills another need that is complementary to it. That would be my solution, Tim, to that particular conundrum.
Yeah, thank you, Tim and Jez. That was a really great question, a really good answer as well. So yeah, appreciate that. Keep questions like that coming in for sure. Next question is from Ivan again. It says the design you propose would necessitate large access chambers, often located in the middle of roads. Recently, a water utility provided me with cost estimates for installing PRV chambers as part of a dynamically adaptive network implementation, which ranged from £80,000 to £100,000, an astonishing figure. How do you plan to manage, control, and reduce the chamber installation costs?
So these are Ivan again, obviously. Nice to hear from you again, Ivan. Yeah, so interesting enough. Firstly, is when we looked at this, we were looking at doing this and saying, okay, can we use opportunistic installation points? So one of the major areas that we'll be looking at is where you've got an existing burst. So where you have an existing burst, we know that that main is in poor condition at that point. One of the questions that we always have is, well, how much of that main is in poor condition? Is it 10 meters on either side, or is it 100 meters on either side? What we'd love to be able to do actually in those scenarios is put a camera up the pipe and have a look while the main is off. But at the same time, we've got our network colleagues who are concerned about the 3-hour interruption to supply going, no, turn the pipe on, get the water back on now. Okay, so we're up against the clock. So one of the ideas is to drop a UAP in and then literally get the water back on and then use that and start cameraing both directions whilst you've got that excavation open. So there's opportunistic ones like that. Secondly, as well, is choose your locations. And let's go back to that example I gave where we talked about, Trafalgar Square. You can probably see in the background, we're right by a road junction here outside my offices. It's a really busy junction. Carrying out a repair in the middle of that junction would be incredibly expensive for all the reasons you've given. That's why it can cost so much. So what I really want to do is I'm not going to cut a UAP in the middle of that junction. The whole point behind this is to be able to insert devices in that can then get to the places where I can't cost effectively repair. So for me, it would be, I'm going to move away from that junction, 50 meters, 100 meters down the road, find a point that's accessible. That's where I want my UAP cut in, so I can actually access that junction remotely. That's where we see these technologies going. And therefore, because we're talking about this remote access, it gives us far more flexibility to choose where we're going to put the UAP in. I don't think we're ever going to get away with having some cost associated. What we are looking is how we can minimize that cost as well.
And it's fair to say one of the criteria that we looked at was the size of the chamber, because that's cost associated. So looking at that was there was a preference for technologies where you could build a smaller chamber and reduce the cost.
BMC scored 5.
Yes.
Amazing, thank you both for that. Next question is from Jason Harvey. I'm a massive fan of under pressure access to live water mains. There's enough technologies in the market right now, let alone 5 chess moves in future, stuff not even ideas yet, that make the case for furthering the innovation, perhaps invention, of systems that enable access to pipes. South West Water have recognised this by ensuring every installed hydrant is a TB. Since they first hit the market perhaps a decade ago, I ran a quick query and we may be lucky that some 80% of our hydrant estate, washouts and fire, are installed vertically, not on terminal fitting hosting branches. How representative are we with such? If we are, is there a more rapidly achieved outcome from focusing on the tech that's inserted through an 80 clear opening of a TVH, making it, for example, more robust for managing the cut edges of a UP drilling? Miniaturization of kit too. This just happens anyway with everything. Another thought on that, most of my vertically installed hydrants are on inline vertical Ts, so relatively smooth interfaces / transitions between vertical and horizontal directions. Loving that this process is being given the focus, and kudos to Jez and the team for that.
Jason, nice to hear from you as well. Thanks for joining us. No, really good point. I'm not going to go back over the complementary technologies and the whole thing about the hydrant bit. What I do want to talk about is this bit of bringing together technologies. There are a number of technologies out there. We've kind of talked about that already. The work that we've done here allows those technologies to be brought together. And I think let's make that clear. When we talk about innovation, typically we talk about 3 types of innovation. Okay, we talk about breakthrough, which is where nothing like that existed before. That's like the invention of the telephone. Okay, we talk about differentiated innovation. Okay, where you take existing projects or products and put them together in a way nobody else has. So that's the iPhone. There were phones, there were apps. Okay, there were touch screens before. Steve Jobs just put them together in a way that nobody else had. And then there's incremental innovation, where you simply take an existing product and you keep tweaking it to get it better and better. And that's the Android phone. Okay, no breakthrough product, they just tweaked and tweaked. Where I see the UAP fitting is pretty much in that differentiated innovation. As we went through this process, we started to realize, yes, there are existing tools and systems out there. So for instance, when we realized that slot and the cutting mechanism to get away from those sharp edges, that was important. We then started looking at milling technologies, which then led us down to those valves as well. And what we see as for the UAP is it's probably bringing together technologies that already exist and putting them together in a way that hasn't been done before. Now, the question is what's the use case for that? What are you actually trying to solve when you bring those technologies together? Steve Jobs had a really clear idea that he wanted to stand up on stage and hold up that phone and go, here's how it works. And he really did his research in terms of what the customer wanted, what they needed. So what we've done here is we've done that design process, but a key part of that was actually that first stage of going, what do the water companies need, but also what do the suppliers need, the people who are trying to put things in place. We talked about that 5 moves ahead. I'm working with a number of the universities. So I go to a number of the universities who are working on the robots in pipes projects, and I'm seeing the devices that they are currently prototyping and creating in order to insert into pipes to do inspection and ultimately repair. And because of that, we've got these discussion points there as well and saying, okay, let's make sure that we understand the problem we're trying to solve. And then and only then can we start to bring together those complementary technologies to put it together into a working solution. Hope that kind of answers the question, Jason. I'm sure we can pick it up another time anyway.
We've now got another question from Tim Evans. Is the aspiration to have a single size bore of entry point, irrespective of the diameter of the main, a few different sizes of entry point covering ranges of diameter, or an entry point for every individual diameter?
I can pick that one up. Yeah, Tim, it's a good point. So yeah, the original aspiration was to have a single universal size access point. We were looking at 100mm diameter access point. Obviously, when that's the size of the main is below that, so you've got an 80mm main, you can't have that access point. So there becomes a need to go smaller. The designs that we've got enable you to have different sized access points. But I think when we talk to manufacturers, and manufacturers will want consistency and they won't want to have lots of different offerings. That doesn't generally work with the economics. So I think you will see at the very, very small end, possibly a smaller diameter access point, but as soon as you get to 100mm diameter and above, that would be the access. Unless we have robotic type technologies which will benefit from a much larger, and I think everything we've talked about can be scaled up.
Perfect, thank you for that. Next question is from Ian Small. This is a really interesting project on the lessons learned side. It could be improved if the project management was more focused on the pace of learning and readjusting the target of the project based on the learnings, rather than a traditional waterfall approach where you've already defined the final outcome before the thunderbolts arrive.
Mark, can I?
Okay. Thank you for that. Yeah, we'll think about that.
Yeah, I think so. The point. Hi, sorry, I will say hi to Ian. I know him as well. Nice to have you join us also, Ian. I think the bit behind this was we had a final outcome in terms of the fact that we wanted to design a UAP and we wanted to come up with a design that we could present to manufacturers with all of the understanding behind that and saying, what's the problem we're trying to solve? Well, how we actually ran it, and you're correct, it was waterfall to some degree in terms of we went through stages, but what we were actually doing as well is doing sprints as well. So where we would have those meetings where we would all get together, those were run as one-day sprints, very much in terms of that collaborative way of working together. It certainly, I'm not going to suggest in any way it was agile, because it was difficult to run that with all of the collaboration going on. But that sprint, coming together and doing the sprints worked really well and bringing everybody together. Ian, I know you're working on innovation. Certainly it may be useful that you and I picking up, at some point and just going, okay, if we're doing this again, what lessons can we learn about how we can run it more agile and things like that? However, I will point out that I was ambitious. I pushed, I said, I think we can do this in 12 months. And I knew that was going to be ambitious when I did it. As Mark has rightly pointed out, that was overly ambitious. Okay, these kind of projects do take time to do and go through. And yeah, I'd be kind of interested in ways in which we can expedite that and kind of speed up that process in future. Ian, I'll leave it at that for the moment.
We've got another question. Thank you for the question and the answer as well on that last one. This question's from Daniel Fletcher. They said, perhaps a silly question, but am I correct in saying that the UAP could also act as a network fusion point for alternative water supplies? Can't see why it couldn't.
Yeah, so okay, let me explain. So a network fusion point. So effectively, where we have an interruptions to supply, we want to keep customers supplied with water. So you may have, a section of pipe that is the only feed into an area. And when you cut that off, there's no other way of feeding those properties. So what you want to be able to do is go beyond that and inject water into the system. That's either by doing an overland or tanker system coming in. But to do that, you need a entry point in that's of sufficient diameter to keep that lot supplied. And that can be tricky to do. So yeah, absolutely correct. It could be used for injecting water back in. There's no real reason why it couldn't, and it would probably be because of all the work we've done. It's going to be a larger diameter. So yeah, I could certainly see it being used in that way. I have to say, the idea we always had was for inserting devices in. So therefore, inserting water in wouldn't be that far off. But yeah, I think it could be used in that way.
Yeah, and we didn't really talk. I didn't really talk about it in detail, but yeah, the idea is to have compatibility with anything that you would put on a hydrant. You could put onto the UAP. So making connections, pipe connections, should be very possible. Yeah, no such thing as a stupid question. Definitely,
no, definitely not. I saw a question come up from Tim there. Can we just have the chat back up, because I think Tim was just mentioning a project that Thames Water have, and I'm just going to lean forward and do that kind of awkward lean bit. Can you just scroll up? I think Tim had one there. Thank you. That's the one I was looking for. Yes. So Tim's absolutely correct. I am passionate about this pipe leak repair solution. Thames have actually got Ofwat funding for a project that is just about to kick off. That's looking at how they're going to do that. And if you want to know more about that, I'm going to suggest at the moment contact Tim. I don't know exact details in terms of doing that one, but that's a project that's kicking off as well. Just to give you an understanding, I was at university in the East End of London, Mile End Road, Queen Mary College. Saw a scheme advertised recently where they were talking about replacing 1 mile of pipe in Mile End Road, Thames Water scheme. This is on the internet, so it's not private information in any way, but the budget cost for replacing 1 mile of pipe in Mile End Road was £20 million. Now, it doesn't cost £20 million to simply put pipe in the ground. The costs there's loads of other things that have added onto that cost in terms of the complexity, in terms of disruption to traffic, in terms of dealing with local businesses, in terms of all the other things that are going on around that. Thames have a really difficult job in terms of managing the water supply in London when it's so difficult to dig up the road. And that's why they've got this project there, no dig leak repair from concept to reality. Great project kicking off from Thames Water, and I strongly support that as well. In fact, we're part of that project also because we think this is exactly the kind of way the industry needs to go. So you can find out more, hopefully from Tim, but I really wanted to give that one a name check because I think that's a really important project.
Perfect, thanks. I think we might have time to just squeeze one more question in before the end. So we've had a few others that have came through other channels like anonymously. One of those is, do you think the Ofwat Innovation Fund has changed the attitude to innovation within water companies?
Yeah, completely. Yeah. I've been in the industry, as I said, 30 years. I was doing ad hoc, my kind of own little innovation stuff for probably about 20 years. 10 years ago, I started doing innovation here at SES Water. The water industry is a conservative industry, and some of you are going, absolutely, because you know what we're like. We employ safe managers, okay? We deal with a food grade product, and if we get it wrong, it has massive implications for our customers. And so typically our managers are very, very safe, and we are very, very risk averse. What's happened with the Ofwat Innovation Fund is it has made all of our management, from directors down to our teams, actually think about how we can introduce new ways of doing things into the water industry. Now, that doesn't mean to say we're not going to be safe about it. We will, of course, be looking at all the regulatory aspects. But the danger comes is that when you are concerned about those, it's very easy to just say, let's just keep doing it the same way because we know that works. But there may be better ways. And that's where I really see the Ofwat Innovation Fund as helping, is because it's really kick-started that attitude in the water companies of just going, no, actually, we can think of different ways of doing this. And here's a fund where we can try things out and learn and share and collaborate and move forward together. Leo, certainly that's been my view.
And I'm involved in quite a few across the industry. I think it's changed the appetite for industry, the ambition, it enables companies to take a bit more risk. It's the sort of thing we saw in the gas sector for quite a long time, and the water industry is following that lead. Yeah, embrace everything you just said, Jess.
Good. Brilliant. Thank you both for those answers. I think that just about brings us to the end of today's showcase. I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who's taken time out of their day to join us today. We hope you found it valuable. And especially a massive thank you to Jeremy and the rest of the presenting team for sharing the project learnings with us so openly and all the hard work that's gone into getting this showcase together. I believe my colleague launched a poll in the chat about today's session. Please do take a moment to give us some feedback, as we find it extremely valuable. There are also some links in the chat for some updates from Spring, such as our accelerator and some upcoming events. These went into the chat earlier, so just have a look back for those. Anything else, sort of, you can keep an eye on our LinkedIn. We're always very active on there with all of the latest events, showcases, things that we're getting involved in. So yeah, give us a follow. As mentioned at the beginning, we'll be posting a recording of today's showcase on our platform alongside the case study, which should be available within the next week or two, really. Any questions that haven't been answered in today's showcase will be uploaded alongside this in written form. Thanks again so much to everyone for coming. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.